The crystal chamber of Xyrath was unlike any hall Elias Ward had ever seen. Its walls were carved from translucent stone that captured the light of the twin suns outside, scattering it into colors that shifted like living rainbows. Pillars rose high above, each wrapped in threads of silver and gold, reflecting every flicker of light as though the stars themselves had been trapped indoors. The air carried a soft hum, a vibration that came from the crystals themselves, as if the chamber had a soul and it was breathing slowly. This was not just a hall. It was the most sacred place in the empire of the alien people. Only the royal family and the High Council walked here freely, and today an outsider, an actual human, stood in its center. Elias Ward shifted on his feet. His uniform was worn, the fabric still marked by the smoke and ash of his damaged ship. He had crash-landed in this uncharted system after a sudden storm of asteroids ripped through his route. When rescue signals failed, he had expected to die alone among strangers. Instead, he had been brought before royalty. He was not sure if this was a blessing or a curse. The soldiers surrounding him were unlike any soldiers of Earth. They stood tall, covered in armor that seemed to grow from their bodies, smooth plates marked with ancient runes, glowing faintly in the crystal light. Their eyes, bright gold with slitted pupils, watched him closely, neither blinking nor softening. Every breath Elias took felt measured, as if a wrong move might end with a dozen spears piercing his chest. He had been warned before entering the chamber: speak only if spoken to, bow if commanded, and never, under any circumstance, insult their customs. Elias had nodded, though inside he felt a weight pressing against his chest. What chance did one broken pilot have against a hall of alien warriors and rulers? The sound of drums echoed suddenly through the chamber, a rhythm slow and deliberate like the heartbeat of the world. The great doors at the far end creaked open. The crowd of courtiers, figures draped in flowing garments of shimmering silk, tails and ears flicking with anticipation, fell into silence. All eyes turned toward the entrance. Through the doorway stepped the alien princess. Saralith of Xyrath moved with a grace that silenced even the restless whispers of her court. Her robes shimmered with threads of living light, woven from materials Elias could not name, shifting between silver, violet, and gold as she walked. Her long hair, the color of midnight skies, trailed behind her in smooth waves. Her eyes were brighter than the soldiers, not simply gold but alive with a warmth that pierced through the cold air of the chamber. Everyone in the hall bowed their heads, lowering themselves to the floor in reverence. Everyone except Elias, who stood rooted in place, unsure what was expected of him. He looked around in confusion, his heart hammering in his chest. The nearest soldier gave him a sharp glare, and Elias hurriedly lowered his head, though his bow was clumsy and shallow compared to the deep gestures around him. He felt heat rise in his face, shame biting at him. The princess did not appear angry. She continued her approach, each step echoing on the crystal floor. Her eyes, however, did not waver from him. For the first time since his ship had fallen from the stars, Elias felt truly seen, not as an enemy, not as a specimen, but as something different. The courtiers murmured among themselves in hushed tones. No human had ever been allowed here. The Xyrath people had long considered humans reckless explorers, always reaching beyond their means, stirring wars across the stars. Stories of humans were mixed with awe and fear, and yet, here stood one, breathing in their most sacred place. Elias tried to calm his thoughts. He reminded himself why he had survived, why he had come this far. He was not here to fight. He was not here to conquer. He was here because fate, or perhaps chance, had placed him in the path of a people who had never trusted his kind. If he failed here, he would not only doom himself, but perhaps seal the judgment of how all humans would be remembered. Saralith reached the center of the chamber. She stood before him, her presence radiant, her gaze steady. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush him. He expected her to speak, to question him, to accuse him, to demand his purpose. Instead, she did something no one, not even Elias himself, could have imagined. She bent her knees, lowering herself gracefully before him. The long folds of her robe touched the crystal floor. Her head dipped slightly, and then she smiled. The sound of gasps swept through the chamber like a storm. Courtiers clutched at their robes, their tails stiff with shock. Soldiers shifted uncomfortably, their discipline cracking under disbelief. No royal had ever lowered themselves before another, not even to leaders of their own people. To kneel before a human, a stranger, an outsider, was an act that defied centuries of law and tradition. Elias froze. His thoughts emptied. A princess, an alien princess, was kneeling before him. He had no script for this, no memory from training that told him how to respond. He could barely breathe. The princess lifted her gaze, her golden eyes locking with his. That smile lingered, soft yet powerful, carrying a meaning he could not fully grasp. But in his heart he felt something stir. It was not triumph, not victory. It was recognition, as though she saw in him something others had ignored. Around them, whispers grew louder. Some called it betrayal. Others muttered about prophecy. The High Council, seated in their elevated chairs at the edge of the chamber, looked thunderstruck, their faces pale with disbelief. Elias shifted slightly, his voice cracking as he whispered, "Why?" Saralith's smile deepened, though she did not answer in words. Perhaps words were not needed. In that single gesture she had spoken louder than any declaration. She was breaking the old wall of fear. She was telling her people that the future could not be built on distrust forever. Elias felt the weight of the moment pressing on him. He straightened his back, trying to hold himself with dignity even though his body shook. He did not understand fully what was happening, but he knew one thing. This was no longer about survival. This was about something far greater. The chamber had witnessed history. A princess knelt before a human and smiled, and in that fragile smile the seeds of a new story were planted, one that would change both their worlds forever. The chamber did not return to silence after the princess knelt. Instead, it became a storm. The courtiers whispered in frantic voices. Some rose from their seats, their tails lashing like whips of fury. The counselors exchanged hard stares, their eyes reflecting both anger and fear. The royal guards shifted their weight uneasily, their armor scraping faintly as if even their discipline was not enough to hold back their confusion. No one in the Empire had ever witnessed such a thing. A royal figure was meant to be untouchable, the highest star in the sky, one who bent to no one. Yet Saralith had lowered herself before a human, a stranger who had come from the stars. It was not only shocking, to some it was dangerous. Elias Ward could feel the waves of anger pressing against him like a heavy tide. He did not need to understand their language fully to know what they were saying. Their eyes told the story clearly. This man does not belong here. He should be expelled, maybe even executed. He was not just an outsider now. He was a spark of fire thrown into dry grass. The High Elder, a tall figure with a mane of silver fur and piercing golden eyes, slammed the butt of his staff against the floor. The sound rang through the chamber like a thunderclap. At once the whispers quieted, though the anger did not vanish. He looked down upon Saralith, his voice booming. "Princess of Zirath, explain yourself." Saralith rose slowly, her movement as calm as the flowing water of a river. She met the elder's gaze without fear. "I have shown respect to one who deserves it," she said simply. The elder's brow furrowed. "A human? A creature of chaos and war? They have destroyed their own worlds and spread their violence through the stars. Why kneel to such a being?" Elias felt a sting in his chest at the elder's words. They were harsh, but he could not deny that Earth had a bloody history. He had fought in wars himself, had seen cities burn because of greed and mistrust. Still, he knew that was not all humanity was. There was also kindness, bravery, and sacrifice. He wished he could explain it to them, but Saralith spoke first. "I kneel not in weakness, but in strength," she said, "to show that the future is not built on fear of the unknown. This human came not with weapons raised, but with open hands. He deserves to be heard." The chamber erupted again with mutters and growls. Some shouted in agreement, but many more shook their heads in disbelief. The idea of trusting a human seemed impossible. To them, humans were reckless, always pushing boundaries, never respecting limits. Elias stood still, his heart racing. He had never wanted to be the center of such attention. Back on Earth, he had only been a pilot, one among many. He had never been a diplomat, never trained to argue in councils or courts. But now his silence was dangerous. If he did not speak, he would be seen as weak. If he spoke carelessly, he might insult them. He took a slow breath, reminding himself of the promise he had made to his own crew before they were scattered. Survive, no matter what. Survival now meant more than saving his own life. It meant showing these people that humanity was not just chaos. "I did not come here to harm," he said, his voice steady though his hands trembled. "My ship was damaged. I had no choice but to land here. I did not ask for your kindness, but you gave it. For that, I am grateful." His words were translated through the chamber by a device clipped to his wrist. The aliens listened, their expressions mixed. Some frowned, others tilted their heads thoughtfully. "I know the stories you tell of humans," Elias continued. "And they are not lies. We have fought wars. We have made mistakes. But we have also learned. We build, we protect, we sacrifice for those we love. We are not only what we were, we are what we choose to become. And I choose peace." The chamber grew quieter. The counselors studied him, their expressions unreadable. Saralith gave him the faintest nod as if to say, "Well done," but the elder was not convinced. "Words are easy, human," he said. "Trust is not." It was then that a new voice cut through the chamber. One of the warlords, his armor decorated with crimson markings of high honor, stepped forward. His voice was sharp like a blade. "This is foolishness. The princess dishonors us. The human lies. He is a spy. His ship may be damaged, but who is to say it was not sent here as part of a plan? Why should we risk our empire on the word of an outsider?" The warlord turned to the guards. "End this before it grows into poison." Several soldiers gripped their weapons tighter. Elias tensed, his muscles coiling as if ready to run, though there was nowhere to go. His breath came shallow. He could almost see the spears lowering, the end rushing toward him. But Saralith raised her hand. "No," she said, her voice firm. "If you condemn him, then you condemn me as well. If he is guilty, then I share his guilt." The chamber froze. Even the elder blinked in shock. Such a declaration had never been made in living memory. For a royal to tie her fate to an outsider, worse to a human, was almost unthinkable. "Why would you risk yourself for this creature?" the warlord spat. "Because he has done nothing wrong," Saralith replied. "And because our empire cannot remain locked in fear forever. We must decide whether we are strong enough to choose hope." Her words rang through the chamber. Some scoffed, some murmured in wonder, but all were shaken. Elias could hardly breathe. He looked at her, and for a moment their eyes met. He did not know why she trusted him, but he felt the weight of her courage pressing against his own heart. He could not fail her now. Days passed, and Elias found himself under close watch. He was not imprisoned, but neither was he free. Guards followed his every step through the palace halls. He was questioned again and again about his world, his people, his past. Some of the questions were traps designed to catch him in lies. He answered as truthfully as he could, speaking not of Earth's wars but of its beauty. The oceans, the forests, the music that rose from its people. Saralith visited him often. In her presence he found a strange peace. They talked of many things, of Earth's laughter, of Zyrath's twin moons, of the burdens of leadership and the cost of trust. Slowly a bond formed between them, not one of romance, not yet, but of understanding. But peace was fragile. News arrived of an old enemy of Zyrath, the Varen Dominion, who had returned to the outer territories. They were ruthless raiders using machines of war to enslave and destroy. The council panicked. Armies were called. The warlords shouted for blood, and once again suspicion fell on Elias. Did he bring them here? One counselor demanded. Did his crash draw them to our skies? Elias denied it with all his strength, but doubt spread like fire. When the Varen fleet drew closer, Saralith made a bold choice. She turned to Elias and said, "If you wish to prove your people are more than stories of destruction, then help us now." Elias looked at her, at the fear in her people's eyes, and at the storm gathering on the horizon. He knew this was his test, humanity's test. "I will fight with you," he said, "not because I owe you, but because it is right." And so the human and the princess stood together as war approached, ready to face the trial that would decide the future of both their worlds.